Against
Wait, is that wait, sorry, is that so what's the sweep? Or what's the score?
Moonlight won 3-2.
Oh wow, that was close.
And I know my
prospective vote.
I know my friend that was going to come on for sure would have voted for Whiplash, but he ended up being busy.
Fair.
And I can't remember anybody else that would have been Team Whip. Honestly, there were people that would have voted Moonlight that were also not free at this time. But he does love Whiplash. Like that's
cool.
That's why I was asking, just to be clear, because I know she had Moonlight in her faves for a very long time.
True.
But I was gonna say we have a marital battle in this next round with the Farewells Lulu Wang versus Moonlight's Barry Jenkins. The two lovebirds squaring off.
Oh wow!
This is Civil War. This is Civil War.
Yeah, this is the Civil War we all want. Obviously, like quoting Avengers, not the actual. Oh no!
Not the actual Civil War. Where are we going with this?
I don't know. I've been thrown off because Lindsay went to a meeting.
Which Civil War are you talking about, hey?
Don't worry about it. Anyway, we'll move on to the next pick. It is going to be Over the Garden Wall versus The Social Network, which now we only have 4 people voting on this. Lindsay's vote may have mattered quite a bit, but we're about to see.
Do you want?
I messaged her for my picks. I think she's in the meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to just look at like where they rank on her favorites?
If you want to look at that, I'll let Turtle vote because if we get all 4 of us to vote and it's a tie, then we can go to that.
All right, let's do that. Let's just do her last then.
Turtle, what is your pick of these 2?
I know I said once that nothing was ever doing what Over the Garden was doing, and I still stand by that, but
no.
It's gotta be The Social Network. I'm sorry. It is like one of my favorite films.
Wow. How dare you?
The thing that brought Andrew Garfield into this world. How am I not gonna vote for that?
Oh, you take that back.
He was born that day.
What?
Spider-Man is what brought Andrew Garfield into this world.
No, I'm not hearing this. All right, keep moving.
All right. Well, I really like The Social Network. I've said before, I find it to be a scary adversary in this tournament. As a film that I'm not, similar to Moonlight, I'm not as high as other people are on this film. But because of that, it's for sure, as Todd has coined the phrase, it's for sure potatoes and molasses here. In Over the Garden Wall, because and again, to quote Turtle, nothing does it like Over the Garden Wall. Sorry. And Over the Garden Wall is just one of those stories that I think now I really don't know anything that like can pound for pound match up with what Over the Garden Wall brings to the table. And I know as we sort of narrow this stuff down, it's going to get harder. But Over the Garden Wall, surprisingly, I'm probably going to rewatch it before we do the next round if it makes it through. But I keep thinking of Over the Garden Wall. I love the fairy tale genre so much, even though there's like 10 films in it. But it's one of my favorites, and I think Over the Garden Wall slots in that. But Theo, what are you picking of these 2?
That's hard. Because this is a very unconventional matchup. I didn't really think I had to pick between these.
Yes, both invent Facebook.
I know, right? It's hard. I think. Wow.
Know what to do?
Yeah.
Can we get a Whiplash
I would
drum roll?
say.
Drum boy bang drum.
This is a case where I really, really, really like both a lot, and I think one of them is more of a cultural force, and I think the other one is a significant like entree in the medium, and really surprised me at like what it ended up being. And though I think The Social Network is probably more important, I think I'm gonna have to go with Over the Garden Wall.
Oh, what? Whoa, yes.
And the word for today is cultural force.
I mean, that's just that's how I feel.
Nice.
I don't know. That's just my
Oh,
I don't know.
yes.
Theo, I love you.
All right. We're not out of the woods yet. Todd, where are you going with this matchup?
Well, I liked both of these movies, but I won't draw this out. I'm just kind of lukewarm on The Social Network, so this one's easy for me. It's Over the Garden Wall.
Yes.
It's so interesting and creepy, and what it did with the animation. Just I'm not a big animation fan, and I loved it, and I've watched it twice just in the last couple of months. So yeah, I vote Over the Garden Wall.
Nice. And Lindsay's vote would not have made a difference. Theo, I'm not sure if you had that comparison.
Ooh, she has Social Network ranked higher.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
So,
Lindsay really likes the
interesting.
Social Network.
I think she would have voted Social Network.
I think so. Yep.
Nice. So that ended 3-2. Nail biter.
Okay.
Ooh.
Wow.
That's why I was very worried because like I was gonna make the argument like, oh well maybe Lindsay likes Over the Garden Wall and better, but she hasn't put it higher on the list when Theo was talking about the Social Network.
Okay, Morty.
Sorry.
Whatever, Morty.
Oh,
I just watched way too many of Gordon Ramsay's cooking shows and was a kid.
All right, we'll move on to the next one, which I'm going to be up first in another matchup. Again, this whole round is just matchups that really don't pair well with each other. Paddington 2 versus A Separation.
In many ways, the same movie.
Again, very interesting matchup we have here. This is tough.
Films.
Technically, yes.
If you watch them at the same time, a secret message is revealed.
Yeah, it's like Alice in Wonderland and Pink Floyd's The Wall. Oh man, this matchup's tough because I think it was
Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay, thank you, Adrain.
How dare
we
you?
get it. You do
How dare you get Pink
DMT,
Floyd
man.
wrong.
Get out of here.
They are a cultural force, I will remind you.
Hang on.
Oh, man.
Okay. 1,000 apologies.
I'm sorry, Pink Floyd fans, the one that's listening. But
Okay, ow.
The thing with The Separation and Paddington 2, I think I went into this leaning towards A Separation. And then that gosh darn bear looked at me in the eyes, and just I knew what I had to do. I don't even necessarily love Paddington, the first film. I think it's cute. I think it's very much Stuart Little, but British and with a bear. So if that were the film, then this would be very easy. But Paddington 2 does something no other film does, and being like such a beautiful, warm hug of a movie that like instantly just inspires you. Paddington looks you in the eyes and he says, "You can be an astronaut," and I believe that. Bear.
Lucy said I could be an astronaut.
But I'm going to go with Paddington 2. I love A Separation. I love everything A Separation does. There's a reason it's a 2 seed on here, and there's a reason Paddington 2's a 3 seed. But Angelis, you are up next. Which of these two are you picking?
Okay. Yeah, for me it's also like difficult to compare because both movies convey such strong feelings. A Separation, it's amazing. I was like stupefied by it because it's so complex and it's such a deep look into relations, but also Paddington, it's like just a feel good movie, and it just has so much warmth. So I have to go with Paddington. I love it so much. I love both movies, but if I have to choose, I have to go with Paddington.
Nice. Paddington 2 taking the 2-0 lead, going on to Todd.
Also, it might be a hot take, but I prefer the first one over the second one. But okay.
Me too. Me too.
How
Bro,
dare
I love
you?
the first Paddington. I'm watching it with my mom tonight. Yeah.
I
This
watched that.
Stuart Little.
I'm gonna
Stuart
kill
Little's
you.
so good.
I'm more of
Yes.
a Winnie the Pooh guy.
I'm more of a poop.
Uh,
Oh.
where
Hey,
are
I'm
you
back, by the
leaning?
way.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
We went ahead and picked Moonlight versus Whiplash. You had Moonlight, I'm pretty sure.
I did.
Okay, it didn't matter because unfortunately,
Yeah,
Whiplash
sorry to
ended up
say.
winning.
No.
4-0. Bros rejoice. No, Moonlight won, and then Over the Garden Wall also won.
Oh,
We
dope.
assume
Okay.
you were voting The Social Network, though.
No, I was gonna vote Over the Garden Wall.
Oh,
I'm
Oh,
so
wow.
sorry. I
Potatoes
love
and
The Social
limes.
Network, but Over the Garden Wall is probably one of the best things I've ever seen.
Okay.
All right, so back to Paddington 2 versus A Separation. Todd, where are you going on this matchup?
I just saw Paddington 2 recently with my family, and we all really enjoyed it. But it's kind of like wholesomeness pornography, and like that's like a genre that like I kind of like, but it's a film I like, but I actually kind of liked the first one better as well, even. So for me, it's actually A Separation. I love everything about that film. It's a hard one for me to not pick, actually. I was charged the whole time. I was shaking at parts. I really like A Separation a lot.
Nice. So this becomes a little bit more even. Turtle, where are you going on this one?
This voting round has been really frustrating for me because it's so far been really great film versus my favorite film ever. Like Gone Girl, Moonlight, like The Social Network, and again, A Separation was one of my favorite films in that year. No, it was my favorite film of that year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Paddington 2 is just so rewatchable. I like if I had one film, it's a toss up between the first Paddington and the second Paddington, basically. So my vote goes to Paddington 2.
Nice. All right. Then I think the bear has taken the victory. But Lindsay, what would you have gone with?
I would do what Aunt Lucy would want me to do, and I'd go with Paddington.
Yeah.
Let's
At this point,
divorce
it's gonna
that
be-
bear.
At this point, it's gonna be Parasite versus Paddington 2 at some point.
I am honestly shocked that Paddington 2 made it this far, even.
Have you seen Paddington 2?
No,
It's
that's why I
amazing.
didn't,
Okay.
I
Wait,
didn't
have
put
you
my vote
seen-
on there. So
Have you
What's
seen the
Paddington
Grand
2?
Budapest Hotel?
I have, yeah.
Okay, you've basically seen Paddington 2. Just imagine
No,
him as a bear.
no.
So
They
it's
are also different
That is
questions.
literally-
No.
You have murdered many people right there.
That's so true.
So if I'm getting this right, it's the Grand Budapest Hotel meets Winnie the Pooh. So we're
Yes,
good.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That is the
Best movie ever.
Then I'm putting my vote in for Paddington 2.
It was
Well,
the highest rated movie of that year, wasn't it? On
Wow.
Letterboxd.
It was because
Yeah,
had a
it
weird
was. Yeah.
But yeah, Paddington 2 moves on. Here's the kicker, though, for all the pad lads and the potatoes and molasses fans.
Oh, potatoes.
Over the
and
Garden Wall
molasses.
plays Paddington 2 for the 2008 matchup, and I hate that.
Oh
just
no!
Bye.
I need to see
Kill
both.
me.
So that's gonna be interesting.
Wow.
At the
Oh my
moment, this is shaping out to be two very well-known, I guess some could say up-and-coming foreign film directors in Parasite versus The Favorite. And then, Lindsay, I mentioned this when you had left, but marital battles with The Farewell versus Moonlight. And now, just a kind of cuteness battle
Animation.
over the Garden Wall.
Animation battle.
Yeah.
The Farewell versus Moonlight.
Yep. Yep.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yep.
That's me with Paddington and Over the Garden Wall right now.
Yeah, me too.
But we'll move on to the next matchup. Speaking of animation,
Sorry, real quick. I just checked, and the only movie that beats Paddington 2 for 2017 is Coco. That is
Wow.
the only
That's
movie
so
that's higher.
wrong.
Unless
That's
you
illegal.
count
So wrong.
unless you count Twin Peaks: The Return.
That counts as a movie. That counts as a movie. I don't care.
Anyways,
Oh my
I
god.
think
Just
Paddington
quick
2 is when
moment.
it
I'm
came
gonna
out.
rate Coco
It was
here
a-
now.
It was at the very end of the year, so it had like that spike because there hadn't necessarily been as much time for everybody to see it.
Yeah,
but I might
let's
be
see.
remembering
Yeah,
wrong.
because when Letterboxd released their statistics, Paddington 2 was the number one of that year.
No, that makes sense. Yep.
But we'll
Don't
move
worry
on.
though. Nothing beats the Harry Styles documentary.
Oh my gosh.
That's so
As it
true.
should be.
Nothing beats
Legitimately.
the BTS
Who
docs.
cares? Twin Peaks is up there, and that's okay with me.
Move on to the penultimate matchup in Into the Spider-Verse versus Silence. So this is a
Oh damn.
crazy fun matchup. Theo, you're actually going to be first to decide which one you're leaning here.
Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Theo's
I love
done.
Silence. Actually, it's one of my favorite movies, but cultural force. Into the Spider-Verse.
God.
Spider-Man is a cultural force in and of itself.
It is.
That's why I voted it.
All right. Todd, where would you have gone in this matchup?
Would I have gone?
Sorry, where are you going? It's not decided.
No problem. For me, this isn't that close. Silence is good, but when I saw Into the Spider-Verse, my whole family just decided to stay and watch it again. Like I love that. I love that movie so much. It's a force in terms of superheroes and rejuvenating the genre. I loved it. That's my vote.
Nice. Turtle, you're up next. Which are you going with?
I think a controversial statement. I think Martin Scorsese is a great director. But,
That's wow.
but I think it's gotta be Into the Spider-Verse. It put the entire MCU to shame.
Ooh. Oh man, Bob Iger has left the chat now.
No, Turtle's
he can
right.
he can stay out.
Bob Iger left when y'all swept Paddington 2.
Bob Iger left when we said Parasite versus Roma, and he said, "Ew, what?" Captain America versus Thor: Dark World. We'll move on to Adrian's pick. Where are you going here? Are you leaning the consensus? Actually, technically, your vote doesn't matter. I have to tell you that, but
Why?
Your votes don't matter.
Because it's already-
Whose
it's
line
already
is it
3-0.
anyway?
Oh, are there only 5 votes?
There's only 5 votes on this one.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I would have gone with Into the Spider-Verse
Mhm.
because, I mean, Silence is just so boring. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
It's actually a really great film. It's just I
Okay,
wanted to
are you
make
serious?
people cringe real quick. No, it's masterfully done in the way it can take so much what some people would just say is like dead space in a movie and makes it incredibly riveting. And I've never seen a movie do that, but Into the Spider-Verse took animation to what seems to be like they used conventional methods, but made it just so much more. So obviously Into the Spider-Verse.
Nice. And I also would have gone the same one. So the only one sweeping at the moment for this Sweet 16. Yeah, I can't help but agree with what everybody is saying. Even the most when Todd said, "Yeah, me and my family saw Into the Spider-Verse," and then immediately saw it again, I completely understand that because I walked out of that movie and I say this ever so slightly, like when I say this, it has lowered a little bit, and when I mean that, I mean like something so marginal you can't even see. But I walked out of Into the Spider-Verse being like, oh yeah, this is easily like one of the top 5 movies I have and will ever see in my life.
Wow.
You got a lot of life
It's now
left.
just-
So, I mean,
It's now just
True,
the top
that's
6.
true. No,
Unfortunately.
I think I think we're only gonna have 5 directors pretty soon in life, and it's gonna be Michael Bay, Yui
Yes.
He's
Boll,
on tour,
and
right?
both the Coen brothers.
Wait, Bull
and-
gets this thing?
did you say Yui Bowl?
Yep, and Martin Scorsese, and Martin's over the hill now, so I don't think anything's gonna beat Into the Spider. No,
He's not dead yet, okay?
I'm kidding. But Into the Spider-Verse sweeps it, and it will go against this next matchup that only me, Lindsay, and Todd have seen. And I'll let Todd go first. This is Startup versus Phantom Thread. An interesting matchup here. David Mackenzie
Whoa.
versus Paul Thomas Anderson. A lot of people have reached out and said you don't even have the best Paul Thomas Anderson film still in the tourney. I'm very sorry. But Todd, where are you leaning with these two?
Well, I really enjoy Startup a lot. I think it's like a great film about masculinity and the relationship between a father and son, and it's really good. But I guess the person who really does love Phantom Thread, and I'm glad it's still in because it's probably one of, if not my favorite, Paul Thomas Anderson. Actually, I just really like the film a lot. I love the direction. I love the way it looks. Yeah, and I enjoy the ending. I think it's such an epic, iconic ending. So I picked Phantom Thread.
Nice. Okay, Phantom Thread with the early lead. Coming back to me. This one is tough for me because I really do love Phantom Thread, and I remember going into that movie thinking it was Paul Thomas Anderson finally wising up and being like, they're not going to appreciate me for making classics like There Will Be Blood, The Master, Punch Drunk Love, even Magnolia. So I'm going to lean into the period drama and finally win my Oscar. So I was not excited for Phantom Thread. And my audience was full of, I want to say 3 glasses deep wine ladies that were on they dragged their husbands there. I don't think they were like, "Ooh, let's go see Phantom Thread." And no, I had a blast in Phantom Thread. I think it's one of the best rom-coms there are, funnily enough. And I don't say that if my mom was like, "Oh, recommend me a rom-com," obviously I'm not going to be like, "Hey, Mom, I think you'd like this Phantom Thread," and her be like, "Yeah, I'm never trusting a recommendation you give me again." But the biggest but of them all is going to be the fact that I think part of this love for Startup came because I watched a film that has become a little bit of a meme with my canon of films. I still don't love this film. And that's The Art of Self-Defense. And I think that's a film that explored the topic of toxic masculinity, or at least a lot of people mention that as oh, isn't it cool what it says about this? And I was like, well, it doesn't actually say anything at all, at least in my opinion. And I know a lot of people got stuff from that. Whereas Startup, I watched that and I was like, no, this is the film that I needed to make a statement about anger inside someone, prejudices people have. There's so much growth in this microcosm of 2 hours of a film, and this made me rethink where I have David Mackenzie, because I really love Hell or High Water, but I always had been thinking that was Sheridan's script that made it so important. But no, David Mackenzie's an amazing director. I'm really interested what he does next, and I'm going Startup is a long-winded way of saying that, but Lindsay, you get to break the tie.
I get to break the tie. Wow. Okay. These are interesting movies to compare. Phantom Thread didn't bore me like I thought it was going to bore me. I was fully expecting to just go in and fall asleep immediately. And I actually found it pretty compelling and interesting. And I think it explored a lot of really interesting things. Startup kind of explores things that I've seen done before in a lot of ways, but it's not a kind of movie that I normally like. I don't normally like toxic male stories, But for some reason, Startup worked for me better than almost any other movie like that I've seen. And I was just like so gripped by it the entire time. And I love it so much. So I'm going to go with Startup over Phantom Thread.
Yes.
The little engine that could. While we celebrate this small victory for Startup as we're closing up here, let me remind you that it is probably going to be squashed like a little bug against Into the Spider-Verse next round.
Oh my god, it's going to be brutalized.
Yeah, that's literally gonna pass out.
Oh man,
We just need to invite Harlequinade into this
Oh
podcast.
jeez.
I know dude is not big on
Into the Spider-Verse.
but still,
Whoa.
like, I don't think we could find 4 people that have even seen Startup.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But I'm not trying to, show any cards for that matchup, but it's likely going to be a brutal beating. So just to recap on things, we have Parasite versus The Favorite, and then The Farewell versus Moonlight, Over the Garden Wall versus Paddington, and Into the Spider-Verse versus Startup. Very nice, everyone.
Dope.
Round of applause.
Woo!
Yay.
We did it.
We did it.
Oh
Almost
man.
there.
Oh
Almost
man.
there.
Oh, that's
Wait.
grueling.
As like a last thing, all 8 of us that are gathered, do we want to say the one film we want to win at this point with 8 left?
Oh man.
This must be the place.
So the
2011.
thing is,
It's
how will this end up being a Parasite versus Spider-Verse? Is what I'm thinking.
Probably.
I could see that.
Theo, I completely understand that, but I'm almost a little bit worried about that because then it's the 2 best films of the last years of the decade, which are like
fair.
2 of the best films, so it's a weird place to be.
True.
I could see something beating Parasite just looking at it.
Whoa. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. I like this.
Oh wow.
All right. I guess I'll have to watch Paddington 2 and Startup then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Do you think in 2030 Parasite will still be as highly regarded?
2030. That'll be 20 years.
Nope.
What?
That'll
No,
be 10
no,
years.
no,
That'll be
no.
10 years. Hey,
Hey, do your math.
do you smell toast? Are you having a stroke?
Sorry. I think in 10 years it still will be. I think where it gets a little bit. Do you mean culturally relevant, or people will like it as much?
I don't know what I mean.
You mean like critically?
Yes.
Or-
It's gonna have its place in history because it sweeped 4 Oscars and it's the first Korean film to do so.
True.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think there's going to be a wave at some point, like 20 plus years, that are going to be like, can you believe these olds really liked Parasite? Because like that happens with every movie. I almost feel like,
Oh,
and I could be
yeah.
wrong. I mean, I've seen
Those are just
people that are like,
contrarian.
oh yeah, I've seen people that are like, oh, There Will Be Blood isn't that good, like even now, and I'm like, guys, come on, like.
By
That
this
just
time
happens. You're gonna
next
have
year,
those type of people.
Parasite will be the Green Book of 2018. I can
God.
see it.
Theo,
No, that's a
you
good
want to say
question.
that?
I think like 10 years from now, this Parasite will still have a place in the argument of at least like social class and things like that.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's relevant that way. As an Oscar-winning movie, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know how many. I'm trying to think about it because I'm trying to think. Even like, I only bring this up because I remember people telling me, and Todd, maybe you can attest to this, that the Titanic was like a huge phenomenon, and even though they still play it, it is not in like my zeitgeist. The only reason I watched it is because I think it was on some list that I was trying to finish, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll watch Titanic. I think Parasite maybe holds a different place than that. I'm trying to think of like an apt comparison to that one.
I still think Titanic is huge.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big ship. Yeah, it's a fairly huge ship.
Oh,
Also, as a film,
But there have been. But remember, there's been much bigger ships
God.
built since then. Much bigger ships.
Oh my god.
what is it?
it's a fairly long film. I remember watching that when I was a kid on like cable because I was like, everyone as a kid had a Titanic face. You were just like, this is
Yeah.
interesting. Or like that one thing. If it wasn't the Titanic, you had that one thing that you were just super interested in. Whether it was like wars
Oh,
or
Jack and Jill.
whatever. Yeah, definitely. So a lot of kids, it was the Titanic. So it's just like, well, this is a movie, and
It
it's
was
by
Lion King.
My parents had a copy of it, and it was 2 VHS tapes. Two.
Yeah, it was
That's
2.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
That
seen
movie-
Titanic
that movie
probably
always
like
scared me.
800 times in my life.
Oh my god.
I feel like it's been a cultural blip for me until I was like 12 and I was made to watch it and I was like, oh, incredible.
Do you think maybe it's not in your zeitgeist because at this point, I mean, Titanic and movies like that came out, 20, 30 years ago have just been picked apart to death. Like everybody's just taken little bites out of them and analyzed them so heavily.
Oh,
And
I could.
Parasite hasn't really. I mean, people have analyzed Parasite a lot, but it's. I mean, where are we going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What new things are people going to take out of that?
Jin Ho will release a new essay about writing the script for Parasite. They're always going to be pumping out. Actually, one thing that could work in Parasite's favor, and I know this might be kind of controversial, is I think it's getting a mini series on HBO or something like that.
yeah, with that guy who did Vice. What's his name?
Adam McKay.
Adam
McKay.
Okay, yeah.
Oof.
Okay. But yeah, no, I think that could like get people talking about it more.
Yeah. I think
I'm
what could also clinch it. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
I think what could also clinch it is if Parasite became a mainstay of like film college.
Oh yeah, like Pulp Fiction
Yeah.
was in the 90s. They were. Well, then again, it becomes oversaturated because everyone's going to analyze it because it's that big of a movie. So you can't do it too
But
much.
maybe that's what needs to happen.
Because I feel like that semi has happened to things like, for instance, Psycho. Like so many people have beaten Psycho to death that like it's almost like people are like really like Psycho.
I mean,
we're going to talk about Psycho, and it's like yeah, well that's one of the best like movies made. Like that's just.
Yeah, they
That's
really
what-
just
that's your
pulled
favorite?
back the curtain on that movie and just like jabbed into it over and over again. It's
Oh my
I
god.
mean,
Oh, no.
speaking as somebody when you talk about like Titanic, for example, and other ones, having spent years watching the Oscars, I think where Parasite is different is it's one of the rare movies where like critics and audiences both seem to agree like so heavily at the same time. Where like everyone I've shown Parasite to loves it, even people who aren't really like film critics, and so where I think a lot of films start to lose their luster is they were either like kind of critical favorites, like The King's Speech, that are actually boring and no one cares about, or like they were, or they were like too. They were like too
You're
poppy.
talking the Cat's director here.
Yeah. So like I think Parasite has a better chance of holding high regard than a lot of the films that have won in the past.
But for instance,
Yeah.
do you think No Country for Old Men, like that's an Oscar winner there? Do you think that has like a mainstay in the film like context of being like film canon? If there were 100 movies that were like, hey, see these, do you think the Departed, or not the, sorry, I'm looking at a list. Do you think No Country for Old Men is still there, like in a lot of people's list in 2020, like 13 years after that one Best Picture?
Probably not. Right?
These film people?
I could
or
see an
these normal
argument for it
people?
though.
Yeah, I could too, but I'm wondering if people would mention it.
so
I feel like
But in, like compared to Parasite, like my girlfriend who likes film watched it with her sister on Hulu and she was completely blown away by it. So it's just it's just different. But I'm not sure if she had that same reaction to No Country for Old Men, which both Best Picture winners. It's just different. It's almost like a certain criteria is met for like the major audience, and Parasite just ticks most of the boxes.
I think Parasite is like by far the movie that I think you can watch it with any level of reading into it and you'll really like it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you can look at it like the first watch, I kind of just let it happen. It's like, oh, this is fun. Like I've seen Bong Joon-ho's like other movies, and they're like you can read, anyways. But like on the second watch, like as I heard more and more people talk about it, like over the months after I watched it, I rewatched it and it was like, wow, there really is a lot going on, and I enjoy this just as much on a rewatch, which is like not super common. And I think some people love looking at like analyzing it, and other people are like, oh, that was fun when like this happened and this montage happened, you know?
Yeah, I think
It
you
really
can
is
look
a
at
film.
different. Sorry.
Oh
Not
no,
trying to
no,
step
I'm
on.
sorry.
I think you can look at both films like that and several other films. I mean, you're asking, hey, like, you know, you have to see top 100 of these movies. Well, all of these movies are going to have different aspects to them. Where I've seen No Country for Old Men referenced in terms of how to movie is this is how you build characters. This is how you build compelling characters with very little dialogue and, you know, make it within its own world heavily influential to the story. Like you just look at Sugar, and like that character makes your blood run cold, but it only takes a couple scenes to do that. And stuff like that I think that people are going to reference with Bong Joon-ho's like Parasite, that, you know, you're going to look at that as like, how do you tell a story that is both culturally impactful but has some humor to it as well, even if it's kind of tongue-in-cheek and self-defeating humor.
Definitely. The one thing I guess I'll leave on as we're talking about this that I sort of think about is in terms of like what the 2010s will be remembered for. I almost, and this might be just because I'm on Letterboxd more than like IMDb or another, like even film Twitter, I don't really check as often. But do you think Parasite has a mainstay to beat Get Out in terms of being remembered? Because I almost feel like Get Out is that claim where it's like, oh, well, here's the movie that like everybody saw. It was critically acclaimed. It was a guy breaking out of nowhere to like be one of the best horror script writers there are. And I think part of that is with the caveat of, oh, well, Jordan Peele has to become even more iconic than he already is. I don't know.
I think
We just cut
Get
out a lot,
Out.
Lindsay. Sorry.
Oh, I'm
Lindsay,
sorry.
you're good.
Sorry. I was just saying, I think like general audiences probably will remember Get Out more just because it was a bigger deal to like more than just like film people. Because like my sister still has no idea what Parasite is, you know what I mean? But she knows Get Out, and she doesn't like, she watches like 2 movies a year. So for people like that, I think Get Out will probably be a bigger deal. With the film community, though, I don't know. And
let's be real here. If there's any film that well represents the 2010s, it's for sure Minions, 2015.
Honestly, kind of.
Yeah, you could make an argument for that.
Yeah, but I think that's going to do it for Ernie. Make sure to stick around for the Elite 8 to see where we side with these next 4 matchups. Thank you to all my guests that have came on to do these incredibly hard matchups. Tons of fun, a lot of tension. Yes. I have my fan off, so I'm sweating. Oh man! And thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.
Adios.
Bye.
Peace. Ciao. Buenas noches.
Other goodbye word.
Buenas noches, indeed.
Yeah, 4 languages. Yeah.
Bueno, si lo están escuchando de noche, pues si no, bueno.